But David, along with this comes Elon Musk along to save us. And this article is from The Guardian. There's so much about this article, and I'm not sure how much of it is subject or
such a fascinating figure for so many reasons, and especially with how anything he does gets reported in the news media is endlessly fascinating to me.
So I don't know if this is an AI story, if this is a human interest story, if this is a media story. It's probably a little bit of all those things. And so there's some really wild stuff here. So first of all, it's the headline. Elon Musk launches AI startup and warns of a Terminator future. Now, I just wonder, like, who wrote that headline, right? I mean, is that a self-contradictory headline? Is that I mean, there's just so much in there, and I guess it works because I was like, I've definitely got to click on this. So, and then the subtitle is Tesla boss claims pro-humanity, in quotes, XAI offers realistic alternative to pausing development of superintelligence, which is a mouthful. All right. So Elon Musk is launching I'm just going to go through this article. Elon Musk is launching an artificial intelligence startup that will be pro-humanity. As he said, the world needed to worry about the prospect of a Terminator future in order to avoid the most apocalyptic AI scenarios. Now, David, it's been a really long time since I've seen Terminator. So I think there's it's obviously been a while since the Guardian saw this too. So I think the whole point of Terminator is Skynet eliminates humanity, but the Terminator is in fact an AI that comes back to rescue humanity. Did I remember the plot line reasonably? I mean, I saw Terminator when it first came out, so this is a long time ago. So is this right? That's right, because the Terminator Schwarzenegger is a robot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you have. So basically, I think what the Guardian is trying to say is that Elon Musk is trying to create the Arnold Schwarzenegger AI, not the kill everybody
Skynet AI, right?
Yeah, Skynet AI, which, if I remember correctly, was a dude with man with no eyes, sunglasses, and blonde hair, spiky. Right? I think that's right. It's a long time since I saw the movie, David.
It's been a while for me too.
Okay, not as long as me, I guarantee you.
True.
So, all right. And then there's this winner of a line. This is absolutely blows my mind, this line right here. Musk said XAI would seek to build a system that would be safe because it was maximally curious. First of all, is maximally a word? Maximally curious? I don't know.
Well, so it's Elon Musk, so at this point he just gets to make up words at this point, and people will tout his brilliance.
It's got an X in it, so it's clearly a Muskism.
Yes.
Okay, maximally curious about humanity rather than having moral guidelines programmed into it. Okay, general listeners and viewers, I'm going to read that one more time. Musk said XAI would seek to build a system that would be safe because it was maximally curious about humanity rather than having moral guidelines programmed into it. Okay, the philosopher, me, no X's in that, just wants to say, so where is the a priori assumption that curious AIs protect people without moral guidelines? Is curiosity a moral system? I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then the next segment from an AI, this is a quote, from an AI safety standpoint, ... I don't know what was said in between there. A maximally curious AI, one that is trying to understand the universe, is, I think, going to be pro-humanity.
Which implies that an AI that is not, quote unquote, maximally curious is going to be anti-humanity somehow.
There's a large heaping scoop of uncertainty in there. From a safety standpoint, a maximally curious AI, one that's trying to understand the universe, is, I think, going to be pro-humanity. What exactly prompts one to think that? I don't understand the logic behind that statement, right? And so then it goes on to say, yeah, he called for it to be paused, but that's not realistic. So, which is just hilarious in itself.
So basically, he said if you can't beat him, join him.
Right. Beat him in his case, or make it more curious. And then he said there's a possibility of a darker future. No kidding. And so, yeah, and it goes on from there, and you can read the rest of the article if you want. But there's just some wild stuff in here. Curiosity rather than ethical controls, that I think a curious AI will guard humanity. I don't understand. I have a curious dog. I don't know why that gives him an ability to be better equipped at guarding me from an attacking bear.
Right. Your
I don't see those
capabilities
things
to advocate for something are different than your capabilities to be curious about something. I don't see how those two are related.
Well, and I could even go a step further. I mean, my curious dog is more likely to find a bear and tick him off than, I mean, right? I mean, like, dog's like, what is in this cave? Oh, wow, it's a bear. Get out of here. The bear comes out ticked off. I mean, that seems to be more of a realistic scenario. The dog is like, I'm curious, therefore I'm going to do a better job at protecting Jonathan. I mean, there's just some really interesting things there. So anyhow, that's, does it have a darker undertone? Yes. I mean, and then you got to wonder, is Musk, I don't know, there's an interesting, is a populace who is scared of the Terminator more willing to do things? Yes, certainly. What exactly is Musk hoping to do here? I don't know. And so, yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, well, and if you look at the website, which is literally like www.x.ai, which kudos to him for getting that domain, because that's a creative one.
Yeah.
He, like, literally, there's so little information on it. It'll be linked down in the description below, along with everything else we talk about today. It's basically, like, its only line that's on there is that its goal is to understand the true nature of the universe.
Yeah.
Goodness, that is a goal. That is, wow. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was going to come up with that with some of my discussion later, is that there was just a breathtaking claim there. But before I actually trip the trigger and get on my soapbox, David, what is it that you wanted to, I mean, did you want to keep on here with the Elon Musk thing, or did you have some, want to turn us in slightly different directions before we get back on the soapbox? So.
Yeah, no, I think this is the perfect opportunity to get onto the soapbox here. And I think this is a good transition into what you were wanting to talk about. So I'd say fire away.
Well, yeah, so I saw that too, David. I saw Musk saying, there is, again, there's a juxtaposition here that I think is really essential for people to keep in mind. There's a sleight of hand that I'm not willing to say is deliberate and for some nefarious superpower reason. I think there's a bit of human nature that's playing in here. And bear with me for a second, because this is going to be a weird juxtaposition. Literally right before this, so Dave and I were on a meeting for the company we work for, Unbound, prior to this, and then there was a little bit of a gap. And during that gap, I went down. I'm working from home, and so I went down to the river, which is below my house, and I went down there because my son has built a canoe, 2 canoes actually, and this is its first test, first time hitting the water, because he's preparing this Friday to go on a canoe trip that will take him from our backyard to the Chesapeake Bay, which is many hundreds of miles away. And so that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 river systems, and then into the Chesapeake Bay. So it's a big trip, and it's one he's been planning on for a while. And he's built the canoe and the gear that takes him. And so this was the maiden voyage, if you want, of this canoe going in the water, and we were testing it out and seeing how it worked. Okay, so the point is that there's something uniquely human about that. There's something uniquely specific about that. There's something that cannot be replaced on a screen, right? So that's a very human thing to do. And then there's a piece of this that all makes sense, right? Like that there's something visceral about building a boat, about putting it on water and watching it float, and then experiencing nature and reality as you go down this river, right? And then you kind of come over, and somebody who's about as visceral as you can get, somebody who makes rockets, for crying out loud, and cars and high ends of technology, that physical stuff that blast off and go into space, right? I mean, because this is a wild, that's kind of taking boat building to the extreme, right? Truss had a line that says, I'm going to build a machine that can understand reality. There's a logical disconnect in that statement that if we're not careful, we will let slide by like that made sense. That would, I'm trying to search for the analogy here, David. That would be like, to some extent, that'd be like my son saying, I'm going to build a canoe that will show me, that will allow the river to teach me how to make the best canoe possible. Like the canoe is going to teach him. When in fact, what's going to happen is he's going to build a canoe that is going to interact with reality, that is going to teach him something about how to do that, but that he is going to have to evaluate what feedback it was. It too chippy? Did it turn too fast? Did it track too little? Did it take on too much water? Did it sit too high? Was it too slow? I mean, like, he's going to have to evaluate all those things and then define that and go forward again. But there's something illogical about this idea that we will build something that then somehow surpasses the builder in knowing, and especially when something when it comes to truth. And, you know, I think this what's wild to me is that news outlets are reporting that and making that statement sound normal when it would be about the most non-normative thing anybody's ever said. There's really no place in history where people realistically thought that what they created was able to surpass the creator.
I can think of a couple scenarios.
No. Yeah, I'm going. Except if you're talking about pagan religions and creating idols. And that then becomes the very definition of creating an idol, right? So in a pagan religion, you would build an idol out of wood. And if you're a Christian, and if you're not a Christian, hang with us. This is not just a religious statement, okay? So hang with me for a second here. You know, the Old Testament is full of the God of the Israelites saying, this is ridiculous. You're building a piece of wood that I made. I made you, and you're making something else. And then you think that this piece of wood is going to rule over you. You made this calf to rule over you. He says to the Israelites in Exodus when Moses goes up to get the Ten Commandments, and Aaron has the people, throw the jewelry into the fire, and they, cast a golden calf and says, this is your God. And basically what they're saying is that this thing that we made now surpasses us, and it knows more than we do. And we as moderns look at that and say, well, that just is absolutely crazy. I mean, I'm going to take a piece of wood, carve it, put a face in it, and say, oh, this is a God. And yet that is the very definition of what we're doing. And my point here, whether you're Christian or not, is that societies that can actually find their way forward are not societies that make idols, that make obvious idols and think that those idols have the ability to be superior to those that made them. And societies that do that go down some pretty interesting dead ends, and that often have really bad consequences for the people in those dead ends, maybe a la Terminator. And so a right ordering of what exactly it is that you're creating and who created whom and for what reason and how you define truth, that ends up being a pretty important thing. And I think, to quote Elon, it would behoove us to be maximally curious about truth before we start creating machines to figure it out for us. So anyhow, I will now carefully step off the soapbox before I start foaming at the mouth. And
Sure.
There's some big ideas that I think are just not being unpacked on a bunch of headlines that are assuming some really breathtaking assumptions that I think lead in some significantly impactful ways, impactful places. So
yeah. I think really just what we're seeing is that this is just another aspect of really what all of what idolatry is, and of what worshiping idols is that it's taking something and elevating it because it is something that is advantageous to you. Ultimately, any sort of idol worship at the end of the day is out of thinking that you will get something out of it that is better. And so in this specific case, there's a bunch of different cases of this happening throughout history, but in this specific case with artificial intelligence, to an extent, I think it's looking to AI to be able to process and learn and understand. Basically, it's a god of information is almost what it is, in how it's being presented. And essentially, it's not us casting an idol saying, because we have this idol, it is this god is going to allow us to do what we want. And so this idol of AI is going to allow us to surpass our human limitations, and what we have created is going to allow us to make us better than how we were originally intended to be. And there's just a whole lot that is problematic about that. But I think ultimately the primary thing is that it is looking to something that is created as a source of value for who you are as an individual. Is that if you are looking to something like this to make yourself basically like find your fulfillment, find your purpose, if you're looking to something created to find purpose, you are ultimately never going to find satisfaction, because at the end of the day, at least in the framework that we are coming from a Christian perspective, is that the only way that you can find true fulfillment in the reality is by looking to the creator of reality and finding what he says and looking to him for fulfillment.
Yeah, I think it's excellent points, David. And I think that, and this is I said earlier, even if you're not really just hang with us for a second, so some important points to be made. And I would ask you to still hang with us, but this is more of a religious statement based on our Christian worldview. And that is that I think that there's a reality of the universe that says that there is a hierarchy of making, that there's less derivative value as you go down the chain. Right. So in other words, God created humans. And so there's an aspect here that humans, by the very nature of the foundations of the universe, do not surpass God in glory. And then I think that is also true as you come down, right? That which humans create will not surpass God in glory. And so, and that would apply to a carved idol, but it applies just as much to a highly sophisticated, coded, maximally curious AI. That still in this hierarchy, there is a value level that does not translate. That there's a loss of value, a lessening of value as you go down, and that there's something foundationally important about that. That if we get that mixed up, there's a really good not a good possibility. There's ample evidence, is the way I should say it. There's ample evidence that if you look at that in history, when that has mixed up, that's almost always when things go badly. And bad ideas lead to bad consequences, and those consequences can really disproportionately hurt certain people, especially people that have less power. And so, as maybe our big alternative idea for this podcast is to understand the impact of some of these ideas, right? So there are ideas out here, some of which are bad. So it's a great idea to make ChatGPT hallucinate less and then become a more accurate, helpful way to diagnose illness online. I think that's a really good value add for humanity. But then there's another idea that is we should create an AI that has no ethical constraints and hope that if it's curious, it will help protect humanity. Probably an idea that has significant consequences and not necessarily positive ones. There ought to be those of us who step up and say, I call a flag in this play, and want us to sort of stop and think and consider a little more before we just, read the headline, shrug our shoulders, and it's like, oh, there's Elon over there creating something interesting again. I guess that'll turn out well. So.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this clip of the Alternative Ideas podcast. If you want to hear the full episodes or some of the other clips of some of our discussions just like this one, you can find all of those right here on the Alternative Ideas YouTube channel.